how to find great real estate deals in any market. That's today's show. Let's dive into it. Here we are at our very first rental property. Hey everyone, I'm Clayton Morris, longtime real estate investor, spent many years in the television industry before deciding to retire at the age of 40 to focus on passive income and financial freedom, helping other people do the same. I've got a fellow TV guy on the show today, somebody who has been through the ringer just like I have, not only in the TV world, which is a crazy world all to its own, but also in the real estate world, having survived the crash, going through what happened in 2008, losing $16 million. $16 million as a result of the crash and how you bounce back from that. My guest today on the show is Marty Boardman. He is a real estate investor. He's built back up again. He's from the TV business, and now he helps people fix and flip houses. Marty, welcome to the show.
Thanks, Clayton. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. It's a pleasure to have you on the show. And I love that you worked in the TV business because your shot looks great. If you're watching the video version of this, you've got the lighting is good. You've got a good camera shot. So take me back. How did you get started in the TV world? I think this is you might be the first TV guest from a fellow TV person here on the show. How did you get started in the TV world and go into real estate?
Well, I actually wanted to go into radio. I was 14 years old. I had a little, radio DJ booth set up in my bedroom, and I used to pretend to be a DJ, and my mom worked at a community college. She got me in a radio broadcasting class there at the community college where I grew up in Yuma, Arizona, very small town. And eventually I met a TV news cameraman at the local TV station in Yuma who got me a job at the TV station, and I just kind of worked my way up and continued to do one job after the next at the TV station. Eventually ended up in Phoenix, Arizona as a TV news photojournalist or cameraman, and just kind of stumbled into it. But I love telling stories. I like educating people and teaching people how to do things or to learn more about issues. So I guess then the natural evolution then for me after I got burnt out of working in TV news, I was telling you before we went on, I got tired of working in local TV news where it seems like anymore all we do is chase ambulances and raindrops, especially here in Phoenix. With the weather, anytime it rains or there's any type of weather, we all go berserk and have TV news camera crews on every corner standing next to puddles.
It is funny. I mean, I lived out in Los Angeles, and in that kind of climate where, holy smokes, if it rains once a year, it's like the biggest story. Oh my gosh, look out. And everyone, it's amazing how people don't know how to drive. I mean, they'll pull off to the side of the road and they just don't know how to drive in rain.
Yeah, well, and so the local TV reporters here spend hours, telling people, hey, don't drive into that puddle or underneath that freeway overpass full of water, because you don't want to be, one of those dumb motorists who has to get, carried away by a fireman away from the water. So.
Yeah, you always see those on the local news. Yeah, of course, I've spent many years in local news before going to the network, and I do not miss it. When I travel around the country and I flip on the local news sometimes, I think, oh, those poor people. I know what they're going through right now. They're having to come up with what's the top story of the day, and it can be brutal. So take me back to when you're in Phoenix as a camera guy working at the local affiliate there, and you decide. I mean, you're right before the crash. You're kind of watching what's happening up until the crash, and you're deciding, I'm going to get into real estate. You build up a huge portfolio of properties in 2002. How did you do that? First of all, how did you do that on a camera guy's salary in Phoenix? How did you get started?
So what happened is there was a point where I got in the TV news business, probably like a lot of people that are watching this or listening to this right now, in any job, doesn't matter what it is, or you're just kind of burnt out, right? And you're like, I'm just tired of doing this job or working at this company. And that's where I was in 2001. And right around that time, I read Robert Kiyosaki's book, Rich Dad, Poor Dad. And that really resonated with me. And if you've never read the book, he does this, graphic or this 4-quadrant box. And he talks about being a business owner and owning passive income. And that really appealed to me. I wanted to own real estate. I wanted to own cash flow producing real estate, and I wanted to fix and flip. So the way I looked at it, Clayton, was, hey, if I fix and flip houses, that's my business. right? And that generates enough income or revenue for me to buy passive income producing real estate. So that was my whole plan. And so I decided I was going to leave my job at the TV station and fix and flip houses and have that be my business. And then I can accumulate enough cash flow, or rather enough revenue from the fix and flip business to buy and borrow money to own rental property. So that was my plan really from day one, starting in 2001. So I did like what most new real estate investors do. I paid a lot of money and flew out of state to a seminar, a conference, and I bought about $1,200 worth of courses on how to buy foreclosures and how to do lease options. And while I was still working at the TV station, I did a couple of deals and I made some money. And I was able to convince my wife to allow me to quit my full-time job as a cameraman and just go into real estate full-time. And the time I was making $60,000, $70,000 a year as a photojournalist at the TV station, I said, listen, I can make at least that much money in this real estate investment business of ours. So my first job as being a good salesperson, I convinced my wife to let me quit. And that's when I went into the business full time in 2002. So I was just a few years away from what I didn't know at the time was the crash. And so I was buying a lot of pre-foreclosures. I was dealing directly with homeowners in foreclosure. I was door knocking. I would go out and knock on 40 to 60 doors every single weekend.
I love it. You were doing, here I was at the network at Fox News Channel, and I was doing the same thing, knocking on doors. I hope people paying attention to this right now understand, like, if you want it badly enough, you're going to do what Marty did, which is, you're going to have that energy, that tenacity, like a dog with a bone, go out there and do what Marty did. So I'm curious though, you were knocking on 40 doors. Did you have the capital in the bank to be able to pull the trigger, or were you, wholesale flipping to other flippers in town to make some, 5,000, 10,000 in between a deal? How did you do that?
So it started out that way, yes. So when I would knock on the door of a homeowner in foreclosure, typically they're in pretty dire straits. They're in a desperate situation. So I could typically convince them to just do a subject to deal where they just deed the property over to my LLC. I would bring their loan current and maybe give them $5,000, $10,000 in cash. And then, yes, I would either wholesale the deal, or I would keep it for myself as a rental, or I'd fix and flip it, just depending upon the capital I had at the time. And I get this question a lot, how do you find the money to do real estate deals? And I always say, if you've got a great deal, the money will find you. Mm-hmm. And these subject to deals, I had some money. I mean, my wife and I both worked. We didn't have any kids. So, we had, $50,000, $60,000 in the bank, cash that I could use to do these subject to deals and get in and out of them quickly and either wholesale them or fix them and flip them. But I also had a father-in-law who cared about seeing me succeed, and he was in real estate as well. So he kind of saw what I was doing. And after about a year or two of not being employed, and we weren't living in a cardboard box under the freeway, he's like, wow, this guy's really working hard at this, knocking on doors. Maybe I'll loan him a little bit of money. And so he loaned my wife and I $100,000, and we were able to start doing more intensive types of fix and flips and keeping more property. So I started making more money, and that was all it took. Then the next thing I know, I had outside investors, private lenders giving me money or loaning me money or investing with me in projects. And that's kind of where it took off right up until 2006 when the market collapsed. And I like to say the music stopped and I didn't have a chair. And by that time, and by 2007, I owned 65 properties. About 55 of them were like these lease option deals, and 10 or 12 I owned just as straight up rentals. And the value of these properties dropped by 55, 60% because I'm in the Phoenix market. So we got hit hardest. We were kind of ground zero for the foreclosure crisis. Right. And I went from owning $16 million in real estate and about $8 million in equity to negative $2 million, like practically overnight. Wow. So, and it's a hard lesson learned. The big lesson I learned from that, Clayton, was I owned a lot. Virtually every one of those properties I owned was negative cash flowing. So you can, Robert Kiyosaki, as I was saying, you can own a lot of houses if you just are cash flowing $50 to $100 a month. Right. But if you're negative cash flowing, the eventually you're going to run out of steam, right? The air is going to come out of the balloon. And I was overcoming that negative cash flow every month by just selling a property to here or there, right? Because I still had a lot of churn in my business where I was buying and selling. But I just kept thinking, hey, these 55 to 65 properties keep going up in value 6 to 10% a month. Why sell them? Why hang on to as many of these as I can?
Right.
Yeah.
And that back then, of course, it was the appreciation game. I saw it when I lived in Orlando, Florida. I mean, you'd buy a house one day for $200,000, turn around a month later, sell it for $250,000. And that was the appreciation play. And so, a key takeaway for you, Marty, is the negative cash flow, right? So now really impressing upon your students and the people that we speak to here on our audience, making sure that if you're getting into a property, that you're being incredibly conservative with your numbers to make sure that cash flow, even with leverage on it, even with a bank or a mortgage on it, you're still going to be coming out on top, even if it's $100, right?
Yep. Yeah, because think about it. You could own 20 houses that cash flow $100 a month, but if you have 5 that are negative 100, that's a lot of money every month out of your pocket. And I have a friend of mine who I remember speaking with right after the crash, and he lost 3 rental properties because he was negative cash flowing on them a combined $1,100 a month.
Wow.
And he was playing the appreciation game. And he said to me, I remember at lunch, he said to me, I'll never own real estate again. This was a huge mistake. And I told him, I said, even at that time, as down on real estate as I was, and as hard as hit as I took, said, there's really never a wrong time to buy real estate, just a wrong way. And I said, you just bought the wrong way. You paid too much for the properties. You didn't put enough money down. You got the wrong type of loan, and you were upside down every single month. I said, let me ask you something. I asked him, I said, if those 3 houses were cash flowing $1,100 a month, would you care that the value of those 3 properties had dropped in half over the last year? Would it really matter? And he said, well, no. No. And I said, exactly. I said, it doesn't, as long as you're cash flowing, it doesn't really matter what happens in the real estate market, whether it goes up or it goes down. You're still getting that cash flow every month. That's all that really matters in this game. That's all that matters.
So Robert Kiyosaki, we talked about that. I mean, when he was a guest here on the show, and I asked him point blank, we were having lunch a few months ago. I said, he had these properties. He's got this one in Hawaii. He's got properties. He's got hundreds of properties. I said, do you know the value of any of them? He said, no, I don't. Yeah. I don't, and he's like, I care about the cash flow. I know what the cash flow is. And that's exactly what Marty just said, that key that you were telling your friend, to understand that if you buy a $60,000, $70,000 rental property, you're all in, you're making $900 a month, $1,000 a month in cash flow. If the bottom falls out of the market, it drops to $55,000 in value. Do you care? You're not, and you're probably not even adjusting the rent all that much.
Nope.
In fact, the rent will probably stay roughly the same, right?
I found here in Phoenix, Clayton, that after the market crash, rents actually went up, right? Because everybody was homeless. Everybody was walking away in droves,
and no one could get a mortgage.
Homes, and they couldn't get mortgages.
Right.
So we saw rents go up. So actually, and I look back on it now, and I just, it makes me want to, still to this day want to cry. And we're 11 years removed from it. But I own 65 properties. If I would have taken the 55, and 55 of them were these goofy lease option deals I did, and then 10 I just kept as straight up lease rental properties, long-term rentals, right? And I look back on it. If I would have taken those 55 and sold them all with the equity I had in 2006, I could have paid off the mortgages on the 10 traditional rentals I owned, could have paid off the loan on my house. I had a second home in Flagstaff, Arizona at the time. I had a Mercedes. I had all the things a rich real estate investment schmuck has, right? Mercedes-Benz, Rolex, all those things. Could have sold it all. I could have sold those 55, paid all the debt off on the 10 rentals, my personal residence, my second home, my car, my boat, and been debt-free and had cash flow from those 10 rentals at about $15,000 a month net, right? Debt-free, $15,000 in net cash flow, no debt. And who cares that those 10 rentals that were worth probably $2.5 million dropped in about a year and a half to like $1 million? It wouldn't have mattered because I would have had that 15 grand a month coming in. Who cares, right?
Exactly.
And I'd be sitting on a beach somewhere, even right now. You and I wouldn't be talking right now.
Exactly. I mean, that's the beauty of passive income and cash flow. And most people think about, they're like, well, how much, What happens if the market tanks? Again, I don't care. As long as that cash flow stays consistent, where I invest, we've got, blue collar, hardworking, the local hospital is not going out of business. The high school is not going out of business. The teacher that rents from me, those jobs will stay consistent. The rent will stay consistent. And guess what? It's going to be harder for someone to get a mortgage if this happens, right? Interest rates going up and up and up. We see another rate increase probably coming here in the next few weeks by Christmas time. So that's going to be even more difficult for someone to be buying a house. They're going to have to rent. So finding these deals, one of the main reasons I wanted to have you on the show today was to talk about your expertise in helping your students, buy properties that they can fix and flip. And just did a whole live show on this exact topic about finding great properties off market. Where do you find them? How do you get them? How do you start leveraging them? So when you take your students through this process, where do you start?
So I like to use the analogy, the Karate Kid movie, the original movie.
Yeah, Ralph Macchio, the good one.
Ralph Macchio, right? And Pat Morita was his teacher, right? His instructor. And there's a scene in the movie where he says he's just starting Daniel's training, and Daniel thinks he's starting his training, but he's actually doing a bunch of chores for Mr. Miyagi, and the first one is, wax on, wax off, and he's waxing his car collection, right? And then, and he's really teaching him how to defend himself against a strike, right? So the wax on, you're blocking a punch to the right and then to the left. And I explained to students in our coaching program, I said, listen, you have to become proficient. You have to become very good and skilled at finding, or I should say, analyzing a deal, right? So, and that requires muscle memory. It's a lot of wax on, wax off. And it may feel like Daniel in the movie, you're wasting time, and it may feel tedious and monotonous, but you've got to really sharpen your skill as far as analyzing a fix and flip deal. So when I teach our students, I said, listen, go find a property. I don't care if it's your own house, your neighbor's house, the distressed property down the street, and figure out, there's really two things you got to know. You got to figure out really three things. You got to know, first of all, what it would sell for. What's the after repair value of that property? Okay, figure that out. All right. Then you've got to figure out what the repair costs are for that property, estimate your repair costs, and then figure out what your margin is, so you can determine what to offer for that property, and just do that process over and over again. Determine the after repair value of the house, figure out what the rehab costs are, and then figure out how much money you want to make and what your offer is going to be. Figure those three things out. And even if your intent is to not buy that property, if it's a deal that you got from a wholesaler in your real estate market, or if it's a deal you found on the MLS, or maybe you just are knocking on doors like you and I did when we first started Clayton, and talking to the homeowner. It's the process that you go through to learn how to determine after repair value, how to estimate rehab costs, and then figuring out how much profit you want to make. By doing that process over and over again, you're going to get really comfortable. You'll be able to make offers very quickly when opportunities fall into your lap, right?
Right. And you're going to know neighborhoods too, right? Because now you're going to become an expert in these little niche neighborhoods. Like I was in New Jersey doing, hundreds of wholesale deals and spending a boatload on direct mail and all those things we don't have time to get into today. We've done other shows on that. But you're going to start to become an expert in, well, that's Linden, New Jersey. I know that a 3-bedroom, 1-bath, it's butted up against, they probably don't have a big lot line there. They probably have a shared driveway. You're going to know the vernacular, the questions to start asking about these properties, and you're going to start to get really smart about the after repair value in these particular neighborhoods. You're going to know that this one little pocket of Phoenix is going to be a smoking hot spot right now. And if you can get this property for, 70% below the after repair value, you're going to start to play with those numbers, and you're going to instantly sort of know these things, right?
Absolutely. And you'll quickly become an expert. It doesn't take long, right? And you're going to know far more than your competitors. Other investors, wholesalers, fix and flip investors, buy and holders are going to know about that particular area or market that you're targeted or that you're focused on. But most people claim they don't want to take the time to do those simple things. I had a student in my coaching program. He looked at one deal and he did these three things, and he didn't get the property. He got outbid. It was a public hubzoo.com auction, and he got outbid. And he's like, this was a complete waste of time. And I said, well, first of all, how many hours did you really spend in this process? Like 4 or 5 hours and you didn't get the property, look how much you learned. And so I asked him, I said, how much time are you willing to waste to become an expert at this, right? People think this is like going out and buying a new car. You show up on the car lot and you just kind of pick the make, the model, and the color that you want. That's not how finding distressed properties works. That's not how your business works, Clayton. It's not how mine works. You have to really, figure out a market or a niche, okay, and then go after that. But it's going to take time to develop that skill. It's not like walking onto a car lot and just picking, I'll take that distressed deal, right. And then you go home and you write out the check and then you get to work. That's not how this process works.
So I love that, being able to identify the after repair value on a property, which in your course and your students, you teach people how to do that, to find the after repair value based on a number of comparables in the neighborhood. Then you're figuring out, okay, what's the cost per square foot to rehab this property? And then what can my offer price be? And maybe then you have multiple exit strategies. I can hold on to this property, I could flip this property, or I can even wholesale this property to somebody else who wants to do the work. And I'm tied up with my capital right now. I can't do the fix myself. But I know that there's enough margin in it for John to do it. He does a lot of great work. I'm going to pass it off to John. So there's a number of different exit strategies. Do you ever get, though, people in your course? Because I get this all the time when people are emailing, they want to acquire rental properties or they want to do buy and hold, but should I do mobile home park? Should I do commercial? Should I do this? They get so distracted by shiny objects that they don't follow one course of action to success. When you get new students into your structure and you start taking them through the process, Marty, do you find that now sort of a world opens up to them and it's hard for them to not start looking other places for advice? Because that's when the trouble starts, to be honest with you, right?
Yeah, we call those people junk drawer real estate investors. Everybody has a junk drawer, right, at home, and I have daughters, so in my junk drawer there's hair bands and scrunchies, right, and bottles of nail polish, right, and flowery construction paper and crayons and markers, right? So, we see that a lot where we'll get a student in our program, and I had a student reach out to me and go, what do you think about fixing and flipping storage containers, like converting storage containers into houses? And I'm like, well, I don't know anything about that, right? And here's kind of where our sweet spot is, and I think really is really a sweet spot for anyone who's wanting to start fixing and flipping houses or get into the business of just buying long-term rentals. It's like, to me, this is all about low-hanging fruit. And if you're going to fix and flip houses, or if you're going to rent houses to people, the lowest hanging fruit are single family homes or 1 to 4 family homes, right? That you can buy for, $100,000 to $150,000 and, or maybe less, and rehab for $30,000 to $50,000, because there's a large market of renters and buyers for those types of properties. We have a student in our coaching program right now who, I didn't know this at the time, but he bought a property in a retirement community. And there's a lot of those here in Phoenix. You mentioned you're in Orlando. There's a lot of them in Florida as well. He bought a home in a retirement community. And so now you've taken almost 2/3 of the buyer pool out of the equation for you. There's only, a third of the population who can even buy in a 55 and older community, probably less than a third. Okay. And he also made the mistake of putting it on the market in the middle of the summer. Well, people who live in Arizona, who have second homes here or live in retirement communities, aren't here in the summer. They go somewhere else where it's cooler, like Canada or the Midwest. So made 2 mistakes. He bought a property in a retirement community to fix and flip when there just aren't as many buyers. And he listed it at probably the worst time of year when there's very little demand in the market. So yeah, I mean, you've got to really kind of focus on, and to me, that's low hanging fruit in your space, and not get too out of the box or try to reinvent the wheel, because you're going to get in trouble, especially if you're new to this, right? Especially if you're new to the business.
Before we get you out of here, and I want to be mindful of your time, what are some pitfalls that you find that new investors need to avoid when they're just getting started? You mentioned one of your students who, put in minimal amount of time and then just kind of got fed up and just didn't know what to do and just, said, I can't do this. What do you see, though, as some of the speed bumps, roadblocks that keep people from really taking action?
Yeah, well, fixing and flipping houses, real estate investing, you have to treat it like a business. It's not a hobby. Hobbies are expensive. Okay.
Right.
And I like to think of what I do is it's a profession. It's like being a doctor or an attorney or, I'm a real estate investor. I'm a professional real estate investor. So that means I got to spend a little bit of time. You have to spend some time understanding how the business works and learning about the business and investing in your education, right? So I had somebody reach out to me the other day and said, hey, I really want to learn the business, but will you teach me? And they basically were asking me to teach them for free and that they would pay me back on the first deal we did. And I said, it doesn't work that way. I've said, you don't go to college and ask the instructors in the school to teach you for free. And then, hey, you know what? I'll pay you back later out of the paychecks I earn when I get a job. That's not how it works. You've got to invest time and money in your education to learn how this business works. And you have to take it seriously. This isn't a hobby. You're not building model airplanes here. Okay. So take your education and take the business seriously and invest some time learning how it works. Learn about your market, learn about the trends, the buying and the sales trends. Get to know people in your real estate market who are professionals, successful realtors, real estate attorneys, appraisers, hard money lenders, learn, and title company representatives. Figure out who the players and the movers and shakers are in your market, and you're going to learn so much. I reached out, I'll tell this quick story. I reached out to a guy, he's constantly quoted in the Phoenix newspaper here. He's with a company called Information Market, and they're always commenting on trends and foreclosures and sales patterns and when like a big company will come into town, like a hedge fund will buy a bunch of property. And his name was Tom Ruff. And I'm like, I kept seeing this guy's name in the paper because I'm always reading real estate related articles in my market. So I just called him up one day and said, hey, I'd love to take you to lunch and talk to you about what's going on in the market right now. And him and I have become friends. I mean, he is the expert for data, trends, sales cycles in Phoenix, in the Arizona, in where I live. And I can just pick up the phone right now and call him or text him and he'll tell me what's going on. And for free. It doesn't cost me anything.
Takeaway. No, absolutely right. Because something I always try to beat over the heads of my listeners is, look, if you're going to go to real estate meetups, right, get out there. They're happening in every town, right? So once a month or every, bi-monthly. Go there, bring a pen, bring a notepad, and don't just be the guy that stands in the back of the room and puts on the name tag but doesn't talk to anyone. Talk to the realtors, talk to the private money people, talk to the Tom Ruffs of the world, and shake their hands and get their business card and write a little note on the back of their business card. Tom is a data guy. He knows everything about Phoenix. And then shoot him an email the next day. Go out to lunch with him, just like Marty did. I mean, some key takeaways. I've gone to these meetups. I mean, I've gone to so many of them over the years. I'm sure you have. And you'll see the wallflowers that come in, and you see them at every meeting, and they never open their mouth, and they stand off in the back of the room and never do anything.
Yeah, and that's the thing. I mean, you've got to put yourself out there. We kind of live in this world, especially today, where people kind of hide behind their phones or their keyboards, and they don't want to actually interact with anybody. And kind of circling back, Clayton, to the finding deals and analyzing deals and becoming really good at that. The next step, because people say, well, there's no good deals. These wholesalers email me these deals, or there's no good deals on the MLS. How do you know until you actually write an offer and put a number on paper?
Right.
We have students in our program right now, and believe it or not, I fix and flip houses here in Phoenix and in Milwaukee, Wisconsin. And people say, why Milwaukee? And I'm like, wow, we like beer, brats, and cheese. Right. But about 5-6 years ago, we were looking for another market because it got really competitive here. And so we started fixing and flipping in Milwaukee as well. And we have students all over the country, but we had a student here in Phoenix just 2 weeks ago, got just a wholesaler on an email list, sent him a deal. And it wasn't a great deal. He could just tell because he's gotten really good at analyzing deals that it wasn't great. But he went out, looked at the house, crunched his numbers, and went back to the wholesaler. And he said, hey, listen, I can't do $235,000. I can do $215,000. And him and this wholesaler emailed back and forth, talked on the phone, met face-to-face at the house. And my student explained to him why he couldn't make $235,000 work, but he could make $215,000 work. And the wholesaler, after 4 or 5 days, agreed to sell for $215,000. So wholesalers are negotiable. Home sellers banks are negotiable. If you're willing to take the time to do your research and put a number on paper and submit an offer, you're going to be surprised. And I think a lot of people, it's just easier to say there's no deals on my market than it is to put put some numbers on paper and send it to somebody because they're scared to death they might actually get their offer accepted, right? I mean,
it's a great point. It's a great point because there are deals in every market. You just have to look for them. And that whole "there's no deals in my market" excuse drives me up the wall. So I'm glad you hit on that. And like your student did, he now understood, because of your training in your course, how to analyze a deal. He knew going into that property that, like we have here in New Jersey, those asbestos wrapped pipes. Guess what? To remediate that, it's going to cost me X amount of thousands to get these asbestos wrapped pipes out of here. Those are asbestos tiles on the floor. I got to get those off of here. And a wholesaler probably doesn't know that. So you're standing there face to face with this wholesaler. He's able to point out these items and why it's going to cost him this. And it's not worth his time then with all the rehab time. It's not going to equal that. And that's how a deal is made, right?
Right. And then you have this relationship now. I mean, we have wholesalers that we work with in Phoenix and Milwaukee. They text me, like they'll text me on my phone and say, hey, I've got this deal. I want you to take a look at it first, because I know if you tell me that you're interested, you're going to buy it. First of all, you're going to tell me within 24 hours you want to buy it. And when you do tell me that, I know you're going to close. You're going to come through. So I just had a deal. I passed on it, but it was because it was on a really busy road, and I don't do busy streets. I don't do busy streets in any real estate market, no matter, because it's just too hard to pinpoint the valuation loss in it. But I turned him down. But he's like, hey, listen, I wanted you to have a look at this first before I send it out to my email database and before I get ready to put it on the MLS. So he was ready to sell it to me, without anybody else in the picture, because he knew I was ready to take action and move quickly and actually give him an offer. And we find MLS deals as well that have just been sitting on the market 60, 80, 90 days, and nobody's even written an offer on the property. I don't know what it is, Clayton, I think, and you and I are about the same age. But I don't know if it's just the millennials, that generation where they don't want to hurt somebody's feelings by writing them a low offer. My brother just tried to sell his house, really nice home. And he had listed it for $265. And he's like, listen, I'd take $245 for this house all day long. If someone came along and offered me $245, I would take it. And it was on the market for about a month. And his realtor kept telling him, yeah, people really like the house, but they say we're priced too high. And he's like, well, then write me an offer for what you're willing to pay. Right. But nobody was even willing to do that. And it was like, and the realtor even told him, yeah, I think people are kind of, in this market kind of worried about insulting you. And it was like, don't insult me. Write an offer. Put something down on paper. And with the last 4 properties we bought in Milwaukee off the MLS, we bought for between $15,000 and $20,000 below the MLS listed price. And it was just because nobody else was willing to write the offer. So, your numbers, you know how to do the ARV, and you're willing to write the offer, you're going to find deals in your market no matter what's going on.
I love it. Well, Marty, thank you so much for joining us today. I really appreciate it. We're going to have links to your course and everything right in the description below this episode. So please, you can click on that. It'll take you right there. But how can people learn more about everything you're doing and what your course entails and becoming a student with you?
Sure. So you can just go to our website, fixandfliphub.com. And we also have our Facebook page, which is facebook.com/fixandfliphub. So you can go there. And we also have a YouTube channel, which is youtube.com/fixandfliphub. And on our YouTube channel, we have tons of free training videos and how-tos. Mentioned, all my years being in the TV news industry, Clayton, I've got, I think, 11 or 12 before and after videos that are like HGTV type of videos. I shot and produced them and edited them all myself. So I've been able to use some of the skills I learned in the TV industry here in our fix and flip business and our coaching business. So there's just really cool before and after videos of 11 or 12 of our projects that we've done here in the last couple of years. We don't do, as you know, those are big productions. So I don't do them at every single house. I pick a special one here or there. And my business partner, Manny Romero, and I will do a before and after video on that. So yeah, that's our YouTube channel. And then, but again, you can just go to our website as well. And on our Facebook page, facebook.com/fixandfliphub, we usually do a free live training every single week, usually Tuesday, Wednesday nights, 6 6 p.m. Pacific, 9 p.m. Eastern. So you can catch those. We're doing one. Like I said, we do one every week. So you can check those out as well.
Awesome stuff. Well, thank you so much. My guest has been Marty Boardman. We really appreciate you joining us, Marty. Thanks so much.
Thanks. I had a great time. Nice talking to you.
Absolutely. And thanks to all of you for downloading and subscribing. It's my goal to help you build financial intelligence here on this channel. We've got hundreds of great resources here for you to take action. And remember, the description below will have links to everything that Marty and I talked about, so you can check out his course. You can hook up with him as well and take action if you want to learn how to do fixes and flips. Until next time, everyone, I want you to go out there, take action, become a real estate investor, because I believe even in a down economy, it's the #1 way to build wealth. We'll see you next time.